Hey, PreSales Collective, it's your host, James Kaikis, and today I'm going to be joined by Christine Ehrenberger Stegmeyer, Vice President of Solutions Consulting Americas at ServiceNow. The topic of today's episode is building your personal brand. This is a subject that is so important to the pre-sales profession as we continue to ask for our strategic seat at the executive table. What is a personal brand? Why does it matter? Does it matter internally? Does it matter externally? In today's episode, Christine and I are going to break all of that down. It's really unbelievable to hear Christine's perspective because she provides so much insight into personal brand and why branding matters and why what people say about you when you're not there matters as well, both internally and externally. So we are going to dive into that. Whether you're an individual contributor, a first-time leader, or an executive, today's episode absolutely applies to you. Enjoy. Today's episode is sponsored by Proverity. In this highly competitive, ever-changing environment, it is key to show continuous value. Proverity Cloud does just that by providing the necessary collaboration, crucial data, and real-time insights throughout the customer lifecycle so that pre-sales teams can remain agile and can unlock sustainable revenue growth. For more information, visit proverity.com. Christine, welcome to the PreSales Podcast. How are you today?
Hi, James. Thank you. I'm great.
I'm so glad to have you. We've had a couple of conversations over the last couple of months and have been talking about getting you involved in the PreSales Collective and on the podcast. So today is a great day that you're here joining us and talking about a subject that is very near and dear to many pre-sales professionals' thoughts. But before we get there, how have things been going at ServiceNow? Unbelievable success, unbelievable hiring progress. I see ServiceNow all over LinkedIn in the community.
It is amazing. A gift for me in my career to be here. The success of the company just breeds success with our employees, and we're seeing it. I feel like I'm hiring all the time. Solution consulting is like 10% of the overall company, and we're growing between 20 and 30% depending on the market. So we're hiring machines.
Yeah, I believe it. And I want to commend you on the infographic that I saw floating around social media today about what it means to be a solutions consultant at ServiceNow.
Thank you. Wonderful insights into all the things people care about. Enablement, compensation, the company, the brand.
And President's Club, most importantly. I saw that was on there.
We are lucky that way.
So Christine, before we really get into the subject, let's talk about you. So how did you stumble into the career of pre-sales?
It's so funny. Everyone says that they've never heard about this kind of role in their lives. But, I was relocating back to Michigan from a stint out west early in my career. I think I was 23. So it was my second job. And I was lucky enough to be on an implementation of Oracle at the company I was at and got super interested in the software and then teaching the line workers and the employees about the product. And, as I started to move back closer to home in Michigan, I found this great role that had the word Oracle in it in the ad. So I was like, hey, that's something I have a skill on. And, just fell in love. The variety of clients, the creative nature of the role, the problem solving for your clients. It just was heaven. I found my match and never left.
That's wonderful. And you've been at some really amazing companies throughout your career, correct?
Yeah. Oracle for 18 years through its crazy growth and acquisition stages, and then went to NetSuite and then on to running SuccessFactors Solution Consulting for SAP before coming here.
That's amazing. And I really appreciate you talking about your career and getting into this profession. And one of the things that I feel like you have on your resume and through your experience is working at companies who really invest in pre-sales, who have really given pre-sales a seat at the table throughout your career that I believe that a lot of companies are still aspiring to.
ServiceNow by far is the best at this. I think our investment in the solution consulting team as true partners to sales is like nowhere else I've been in the 25 years I've been doing this, which makes it fun. It makes us go to market strategically together and win together. And it's awesome.
Maybe that's a good segue for our topic today, building your personal brand. So when it comes to personal brand, let's just start right off the top. Why is personal brand important?
It's like everyone has a personal brand, whether they know it or not. It's kind of what people say about you when you're not there. It's like, hey, that's the sales guy, or that's the get it done kind of person, or she's a driver. It's those words that come out of people's mouths when you're really not there and they mention your name. And so I think from building your personal brand, it's really important to take control of what that is. And if you don't take control of your personal brand, someone else will fill in that white space. You want to make sure that that brand is something you're proud of. And so taking control of it is super important.
That is an impactful statement. When it comes to brand, you're right. That what people say pretty much behind closed doors is what you kind of get known for, a reputation. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on how people should look at their brand internally in the workforce versus an external brand.
It's a great question. I think there's lots of benefits to both. There's recognition for roles or consideration for projects or mobility from company to company that makes branding important. And they're both really important, especially in today's world. The technology industry is not unique to this. A lot of people know people. So if your brand internally is often going to be communicated externally. People call, especially LinkedIn, they know, who your joint connections are, and you wind up knowing someone who knows someone else. And so your internal brand will get shared. So it's important for you from a career mobility from company to company. As a solution consultant, I think it's most important because our customers are looking at our external brand. So people often think, okay, when I post on LinkedIn, it's about my resume and what I put for my own career. But really, as solution consultants, our buyers are trying to understand who you are before you show up. And it's just like buying a car. They're buying you. You are the product. You are ServiceNow in this example. And so what you look like externally and how you brand yourself can mean winning or losing a deal. It can be that big of a deal, whether they trust you. Are you technologically credible? What kind of people are you linked in with? Are they credible? It's important. Are public speaking? Are you doing blogs or articles or, who's made recommendations about you? They want to know before you walk in the room and talk from a place of authority on digital transformation that you know what you're talking about.
I think that there's so many people who say when it comes to personal branding, I'm only focused internally. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn. But like you said, customers are doing their homework. I know that when I was hiring and hiring manager, I always looked at people's Facebooks, their Twitters, their Instagrams, their LinkedIn, just to see what they were kind of all about. And it's great to hear that you talk about that our customers are doing the same thing. Because I think, again, there's many pre-sales folks who believe, I don't necessarily need to be working on my LinkedIn. I don't need to be focused on my external brand. But to your point, is that something that you coach and train your employees on when it comes to our external brand for customers?
We've been working on it, everything from the kinds of communities that they join via LinkedIn. I mean, there's the common things like your picture and things that maybe showcase who you are as a person that they may become endeared to. But everything from the technical accreditations that they're showcasing and certifications, the communities that they're involved with, even their blogs and their communication, does that show you as a technical thought leader to help our customers with their digital transformation, with making their world of work better? And if things that they share and that they comment on other posts also showcase what their thought process is. How smart are they? What is their experience level? Have they done this before? Who have they done it with? And it underlines who they are before they show up, especially during a pandemic, right? We're not showing up physically. And so it's even more important to have a positive external brand these days more than any other, because they can't relate to you as well, not in person.
That's a great perspective about the pandemic and not being able to get to know people face to face and in those types of interactions. Do you have a philosophy on a combination of personal commenting or posts versus posting about our workplace?
It's just like any other social media. LinkedIn's no different than Instagram or Facebook or whatever social media that you personally post on. You want people to validate you. It feels good. It feels good when you comment on someone else's post that it resonated with you. It was smart. you comment about how insightful it was. Obviously you need to be authentic in your post, but I do think it's important to reshare content, comment on people's content that they've posted, and then be your own individual thought leader on what you're posting and sharing. I do think it's important to have some combination.
I appreciate that perspective. And, we've had some conversations ahead of this podcast and talked about personal branding, and you've shared some amazing documents with me in terms of things that you do. And one of those things that I would love to dig into is the elements of a personal brand. What are those elements of a personal brand?
I think there's 3 things that break down your personal brand. The first is like, what makes you you? How do you live that and present yourself in whatever makes you you? And then how do you differentiate that from others? So if you kind of break that down at the highest level, what makes you you? And it's kind of hard to figure it out sometimes. You're like, what am I? And it's kind of a combination of your talents, what you value, what is your purpose in life? Are you a storyteller? Are you hungry and humble? Do you value being authentic, or do you value being a community leader? What is it about you that makes you you? And I think that's one of the things you got to understand about yourself. The second is, okay, how do you present that? Do you do it by presenting your accomplishments, sharing your successes, your education, your certifications, all those things? Like, what have you done? And what do you do? What kind of groups do you belong to? It's how do you present yourself in action that matches to those talents, values, and purpose? And then how do you differentiate? What is unique about you? What's an award? What is a particular perspective or a point of view that kind of differentiates you from others? I think those are kind of the 3 main categories. Once you define your brand, you have to really present it, and you can't do it once. It can't just be my LinkedIn profile. It has to be showcased through all of your interactions, both internally and externally, on how you're showing up to support that brand.
That's incredible and so well said. Recently on a PreSales Leadership Collective event, Nazarani and Marjorie Abdelkrim talked about personal branding. And they talked about your personal brand sentence. And you talk about presenting yourself in all those types of situations. And one of the things that they focused on was the introduction. Do you have a philosophy on how personal branding plays into an introduction, especially in a customer setting?
I think having a brand statement that says, this is who I am, is important not only for how you internalize and act every day and how you show up, but it's also important with customers. They're going to see you, how you see yourself, and how you're projecting the kinds of things that support that brand. So we call them brand statements. Again, what you value, the kind of people you serve, like I'm the leader of the solution consulting organization, or I'm here to help our customers uniquely solve their problems. A brand statement's important. I always say writing it down, like self-talk, like here's what I stand for. It's underrated. It helps you focus on what you're known for and allow you to kind of link what you do to that brand.
I love that you said self-talk is deeply underrated because it's so true. It really is. And this is actually one thing that I've always coached my SCs on is that your introduction in a customer setting is so important because you're going to set the stage for your credibility going into that meeting, especially if it's the first time that you're introducing yourself.
I would even say take some time with whoever you're going to that meeting with to have them credentialize you. It's pretty powerful to say, I'm the leader of solution consulting and I did all of these great things. But if someone else says something that's impactful about you, I think it means even more. I do this with my kids sometimes in front of, our family settings where I'm like, this is my son. He's been super successful doing X, Y, and Z. I'm so proud of him. And that goes a long way. People are like, oh, she thinks he's great. I think if you can have one of your sales reps, maybe another solution consultant introduce you for your credentials, it goes a long way. And their take on who you are can be even more impactful than you credentializing yourself at a customer site.
That resonates so well. I love that you gave the example of your children and being able to talk to, because that same story and example does resonate in the work setting. And so I love that, essentially credentialing within a call. Christine, it actually is making me think when we talk about employees' superpowers. What are your thoughts on employee superpowers and how they tend to work with personal brand or brand statements?
I love that term, superpowers. It's directly related to your brand. I don't even think you can decouple the two. Everyone has a superpower. It's really innate to who they are. It just flows out of them effortlessly. And your superpower is when you reflect on your day and you're like, this is when I was the happiest. This is when I felt the most confident. This is when I was shining. This is when people took notice of me. It could be you're happiest when you're nurturing talent, or maybe complex problem solving, or when you're doing something very, very technical and you're solving a solution that has a big technical flair and you're kind of known as the techno geek. It's funny, a lot of times you can tell what your superpower is. If you think back to when you were a child, and in your free time, the kinds of things that you did. So if you look back to when you were a kid, were you doing art? Were you out trying to sell lemonade on the corner as a salesperson? I think when I look back, I look at being, a child in grade school, and we used to have these scratch and sniff stickers. I'm probably dating myself, but I made an entire business on selling these scratch and sniff stickers. Every new one that came out, my mom drove me to this teacher's store to get my scratch and sniff stickers, and I had albums and albums of them. And I made a killing on scratch and sniff stickers. So from a sales perspective, it was one of my superpowers. I like to sell. And it came out as a child. And I think that if you look back on yourself and you look back on what you did in your free time, or you look at your children, you can kind of see what their strengths are. It's their superpower, and it will come out and work.
It's so odd that you bring this up, because this morning I was writing a post about my daughter. So my daughter has been making loom bands and she's trying to sell them. And she sold my friends on bracelets. And it's been unbelievable watching my daughter and some of the things that she's been interacting with and doing, and reflecting on myself to say, hey, this is how I act, right? These are some of these similar behaviors. And you're so right to give the example of childhood and bringing that to life in terms of superpowers. It is really interesting, one, how you see that in your children, but how it makes you reflect on yourself as a child and how that comes into play in the workflow.
I think it'll help you define your personal brand and kind of lean into that strength. I think for years we've been taught what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, and you got to mitigate those weaknesses. I do think if you can organize and understand and state your personal brand, have your superpower be the biggest piece of that, lean into that, the rest will follow. Good things will happen. The job that you're meant to be in, the career trajectory you're meant to go down, the people you're meant to be around will all flow for you, and happiness will come from that. You were happy as a child making bracelets or selling lemonade or tinkering in the garage on something from a computer perspective. Those will help lead you to happiness because it's what you are. It's your superpower.
So well said, Christine. I really appreciate that example. And I love that you talk about doubling down on superpowers. I think that's something that we all should be reflecting on and doing. Speaking of reflection, I know one of the things that's important to you is a concept that you do called a brand audit. What is a brand audit and what role does it play in personal branding?
The concept of just really figuring out what your brand is today, right? If you haven't really sat down and thought about it, it makes sense to go, what is my brand? What are people saying? What does it look like if I put it all down on paper? And if you think it's important to take control of it, it's a good exercise to go through. So really a brand audit is going through 3 different ways to do an audit. One is do a social media audit. Go Google yourself. See what comes up. It's crazy. Sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, I don't want people to see my YouTube channel. I didn't know I had it on private or public. So I would definitely do a social media audit. Google yourself. Make sure that everything's current. It's the headshot. All the things that you want externally to be seen about you. How you've written things are all the way you want your brand to be aligned. So go audit your social media. The second is ask people. Ask 5 people that are important to you that you know will give you a truthful answer on how they see you. What do they say about me? What do you think of when you think of my name? Ask a subordinate. Ask a peer. Ask your family and friends and peers what they think you're known for. The third thing is you can go back and review written communication. Are you someone who writes 5-page documents, or it's like 2 sentences? And it can say something about you, right? If it's 2 sentences, people might think that you don't care. If you don't post on LinkedIn ever, people might think that you're complacent and that you're not involved and that you're just riding it out at a company. So I do think that written communication and even absence of communication can say something about who you are. So go look back at emails, look at external posts, look at how you're commenting on LinkedIn and see what that might say about your brand. Is it what you want your brand to reflect? So 3 things. Do a social media audit, ask folks about what they think you stand for, and then review documents and posts and social posts that you've had around your communications.
I'm going to ask everybody who wants to go through their own audit to re-listen, because that was incredibly powerful, Christine. I mean, that is a playbook right there on auditing your brand. And I think you gave a lot of really great examples and the why behind them. I'm curious though. So we go through this audit ourselves. We've identified these items. We've Google searched. We've asked people. So how do we go about enhancing our own brand at that point?
There's a couple things. Get that brand statement down. Get that self-talk out there. Define what your personal brand statement is and start doing your audit. And then once you understand what needs to be improved, find a role model that looks like what you want your brand to be. How do they show up? How do they physically look? What is their communications like? How frequent are they? How responsive are they? What are their modes of communication? Find someone to model. And I think that really can help give you a little bit of a framework to follow as well. And focus how you spend your time. People go, God, this seems exhausting, Christine. I do not have time to focus on my personal brand. This sounds hard. But I think setting aside time, and I literally have time on my calendar once a week that says, focus on your brand, post on LinkedIn, spend an hour looking at other people's content and see what interests you and how you might comment or share their materials. Spend focused time on your brand. And then don't stay complacent. Like doing this once where you're like, okay, I audited my LinkedIn profile. I fixed my picture at work on my internal communication. I'm good. Make sure you keep your cadence up and audit all pieces of it: physical presence, online communication, email, texting, responsiveness, and your quality of your LinkedIn posts.
I mean, this is unbelievable advice, Christine. I feel like we're going to need to do a webinar or a workshop following up for people to focus on their brand. So people that are listening are essentially going to audit their brand. They're going to enhance their brand and then put time on their calendars. Do you have a systematic way that you do this? Do you have a worksheet or something along those lines?
We do. We have a few worksheets that we created just to kind of help scale this thought process throughout our organization. And so, we created a worksheet to inventory your brand attributes, everything from here are my talents, here are the things I value, here are my differentiators, like we talked about, and putting together a brand. And what do I want to keep doing and what do I want to stop doing? And then going and even listing, here are all my accomplishments from this year so I can stay current. Which ones make sense to be communicating about? How do I build those into my brand? And my experiences, because again, it's happening right in front of us. We're learning new things, new customers, new experiences. So we do an inventory of our brand attributes. And then we also go through that external, like your digital brand checklist. What do you have? Do you have a great picture? Is it current or is it 10 years old? Do you have a great headline? What are your skills and endorsements? Have you recommended anyone in the past year, or was it 2016 the last time you recommended anyone or had been recommended on LinkedIn? What groups do you follow? Those kind of things. So we have a whole secondary checklist that helps you kind of think through all the different pieces of your digital brand. And then the third one would be, how do we get that brand statement down on paper? So how do we kind of categorize that and turn it into a brand statement and then share it with those that know you and see how it resonates?
There are people listening that are now interested in their personal brand or maybe struggling internally or externally around it. So what advice do you have for people who are potentially struggling with their internal brand?
I think the first step is really to do that brand audit. Get control of what your brand is today and get a clear understanding from those around you what it sounds like so that you know where to start. And then be deliberate about that brand statement. You have to be very deliberate. So in every conversation and all of your communications, take the time to link your actions to that brand statement. Often when I do, as an example, when I do all hands calls, it's important to me that my team feels supportive, that I'm an inclusive, authentic leader. And so I will often say, hey, we're rolling out whatever, X, Y, and Z program or enablement for you. And I link that to who I am. I will say, it's very important to me that you have the tools to do your job to help us grow this company, and that you feel comfortable and confident and are part of a family or whatever that might be. But take the time to link what you're doing in that moment, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, to your brand, so people can see you living that brand that you've now stated and are making a change for. Be deliberate.
So, Christine, what about advice for pre-sales leaders who are struggling with their internal team branding within an organization?
I think within solution consulting, there's different kinds of solution consulting teams. There's often enterprise architect teams. There might be innovation teams within solution consulting, field teams. So depending on the team that you're running and that you have responsibility for as a leader, I think branding can take a different flavor. And it's important. If you're running an innovation team, you have to be seen and known as innovative. So showcasing those key attributes to make sure your team's being utilized properly, that they're seen as that maybe elite organization within the solution consulting team, I think does fall on the shoulders of the solution consulting leader of that team. So how you show up internally and even externally on the thought leadership that your team is providing is really important. And the audience that falls on isn't just the solution consultants, it's the sales team, sales leadership, it's marketing, it's all the ecosystem within a company that you need to work with to elevate that team's brand.
Christine, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for continuing to talk about personal branding. Love what you and your team and your organization are doing for pre-sales. And thanks for sharing your insights.
Thanks for having me. I loved having this conversation and sharing my thoughts on personal branding. Good luck to everyone who's struggling with personal branding. I hope this helped.
Fantastic. See you next time. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, Pre-Sales Collective, what an episode. Christine came with action-packed takeaways. I don't know about you, but I am about to go do a brand audit myself. Today's episode was fantastic because it was full of actionable takeaways. Whether you agree or disagree on branding, it's there. You're talking internally for a promotion or how your team is viewed within an organization, or externally, how your customers or potential employers are looking at you. Your brand matters not only to you, but your organization as well. And so talking about how you show up when nobody's around is so important to you as a pre-sales professional with customers. As I mentioned in the beginning, as we talk about the pre-sales profession, the personal branding and team branding is mission critical for us to get our strategic seat at the executive table. And some of the things that Christine talked about, I really want us to put into place. One of the things that she said that really resonated with me was self-talk is underrated. Understanding what we are good at and understand what we are known for is mission critical. It's actually my favorite interview question is I always ask every person, what are you known for at your organization? And it's a good reflection exercise. So ask yourself what you're known for at your company and what are your superpowers? How do you bring your superpowers to life in your personal brand and your brand statement? And brand audit. Definitely go and Google yourself. Ask your friends, family, and colleagues what they think about you and your brand, and then go and do a review. Go and look and see and build in time into your schedule to do this with intention. The word that Christine used that resonated so deeply with me is you have to be deliberate. You have to be deliberate within your approach. And also get a role model. Go on social media, go on LinkedIn, whatever it is, and look at someone who you admire and understand what they are doing to elevate their brand. And one thing I really want to highlight is that is what PreSales Collective is here for. We have the ability for you to contribute. So if you go to our website and go to presalescollective.com/contribute, we would love for you to write blogs, write articles, share resources, share content that we will give you credit for and highlight as something that you brought to the community. As we continue to service pre-sales professionals, individuals' brands are what makes the PreSales Collective move. And so I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. We will continue to put out blogs, podcasts, webinars, workshops, pre-sales leadership collective events about branding because it is mission critical to elevate our pre-sales profession. All right, PreSales Collective. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'm curious on your feedback. Reach out to me. Let me know what you think about personal branding. Otherwise, I will see you next week.